Hello and welcome to the first Brego broadcast, where in this instance, we're going to be looking at what happened in the UK car market in July, along with a high-level review of the UK economy and its impact on new and used car sales during the month. Going forward, I'd like you to expect to see monthly Brego broadcasts for both the UK automotive sector and the UK leisure market, and that's going to include insight on what's happened in the touring caravan, holiday home and park home markets. As we go further into the year, we're going to extend ourselves into the motorcycle industry and also the LCV market, and you'll get a recording on what's been happening in those sectors as well. So for July, we'll start with an economic update, and I'd love to be sitting here to say to you that the global economy is stabilized, but it hasn't. Donald Trump's trade war is still affecting confidence worldwide as he seeks to impose these increased tariffs and make more money for the USA. At the same time, he's also looking at influencing global harmony for the good of the USA, which in fairness to him is what he said he was going to do when he got into power. However, it's rather disconcerting for the rest of the world. In terms of the Ukraine war, Donald Trump has again got himself involved there, and he and Putin are scheduled to have a meeting together without Vladimir Zelensky or the EU over the next week or so. And that whole position remains somewhat destabilizing for the economy as a whole, because we really don't understand why it is that Trump and Putin are having discussions when Zelensky should be involved himself. Anyway, onto the economy in the UK itself. Inflation increased to 3.6%, which is not what the government needed at this particular time, and that's the highest it's been since January 2024, primarily influenced by transport costs, which jumped by 1.7%, and that includes not just motor but also air and rail fares as well. And of course, from another perspective, the cost of food increased by 4.5% and is now sitting at the highest it has been since February 2024. On a positive note, the bank base rate has been dropped to 4.7%, and although it was a split decision, it still means that we should be able to gain some form of increasing consumer confidence and business confidence from that as we go through the year. And it's likely we will get probably one more decrease as well. Business confidence improved from -27 to -33, according to the CBI, although the forecast is for it to get slightly worse for Q4, but going forward into 2026, it should improve. Consumer confidence edged downwards from 18 to 19 to -19, and that's probably due to the fact that we are expecting to see some tax increases in the autumn budget to help Rachel Reeves out with balancing of her books off the back of the failure of some of her initiatives to be actually put into place. The average mortgage rate is for a 2-year fixed mortgage is now 4.5%, which is 0.7% lower than it was last year. And coincidentally, the 5-year rate is also at 4.5% on average, and that's down 0.33% in relation to last year, according to data from Rightmove. The major purchase index has remained at -16, and although it's a negative, and we'd love to see it as a positive, it does mean that things haven't got any worse from that perspective. The cost of fuel has increased. If you're looking at a litre of unleaded fuel, that's gone from £1.32.95 on June the 30th to £1.34.30 on July the 28th, and diesel has also gone up from 140.26 to 142.13. Finally, just a glimpse of what's happening with unemployment. That has edged up marginally for this quarter and is sitting at 4.7%, and that's forecast to stay stable during Q4, so for the rest of 2025. Looking at the UK new car market, and we're using data here courtesy of the SMMT, it's been a poor month really, and consumer confidence and perhaps holidays have probably affected it most of all. But heavy discounting has been required to make sure the units keep moving, and there's also been quite a bit of increased pre-reg activity, which you'll see in the figures a little bit later. Government EV support is being put into place, although it's being slow to be introduced as they ratify individual models, but it's good that it's there. Perhaps it would have been nice to see it on used cars as well, but that's not where we are. However, Chinese brands have moved quicker than the government because they felt that they wouldn't be getting any support because of the origin of the vehicles, and they've introduced their own £3,750 discount, which has greatly helped them and kind of got a jump on what the government was hoping to achieve. Generally speaking, fleet sales took the lion's share of registrations at 61.1%, which is of concern because we really could do with that being more balanced with the private sector. So overall, registrations were down 5% on July 2024, and year to date, they're down 2.4%. When you look at it from a private sector sales, They're down 3.2% for July, which is a 36.8% market share, which is 0.6% less than last July. And year to date, the picture is up by 4%, which is a 38.4% market share. Fleet registrations down by 6.5% at 61.1% market share, down 0.9% on last July, but year to date still up slightly at 1.6% with 59.5% market share, although that is 0.4% lower than by this time last year. EV sales were up 9.1% and market share for July was at 21.3%, just 2.8% up on last July, and year to date sitting at 31%, and that is against the target obviously of 28% of all EV sales by the end of the year. Plug-in hybrid up 33% with a 12.5% market share and up 31.5% year to date with a 10.5% market share year to date. Petrol registrations down 14.7% for the month against last July, and that's because of the move to hybrid vehicles. And diesel is down 7.9% of the month, and that, of course, is because there are far fewer diesel models available for sale, and that's just 5.7% of market share. Top three OEMs in terms of registrations for July 2024, that's Volkswagen at 9.6%, Ford at 6.5%, and Kia at 6.44%, and we haven't seen BMW in that top three this month, but I'm sure they'll be back next month. From a Chinese brand perspective, we've got BYD at 2.27%, JQ at 1.37%, and at Moda at 1.34%, and we have to consider that JQ and Omoda are essentially the same company. So in terms of original brand, JQ and Omoda are ahead of BYD in a very short space of time. So looking at the UK used market data from Brego, and this is whole market data, so we're looking at probably somewhere between 580 and 650,000 vehicles on offer for sale per day. Total adverts up by 2.1%, and that perhaps signifies that there's a slower used car market because the churn of adverts is not as quick as it had been. But we also see pre-reg adverts up by 7.3%, and that is the clearance of new car stock that needs to keep moving into the market. And in many cases, I understand that has been for electric vehicles as well. Trade adverts have increased by 2%, further qualifying the fact that market is perhaps slower, but also that there is more used car stock availability in the wholesale channels, and that's important to note. EV adverts were up by 4.6%, and the used sales rate on those is actually quite good, but it's down to price, and we are worried about what position the RVs are in currently because they're lower than petrol and diesel cars still, and with the extra support that's come from the government, it may well push those RVs down further. Hybrid adverts are up by 1.9%, and that's going to continue to happen as people migrate from petrol into a hybrid vehicle. Petrol adverts up by 2.8%, because of course there's still a lot of petrol cars around. And again, this is signifying there's just more used car stock availability overall. Total days to sale is 37, but if you look at EVs, it's actually 41. But let's bear in mind that there are many market outliers sitting within EVs, those really high value specialist and performance vehicles costing over 100,000 that take a longer period to sell, and that does affect that figure. The average used car price has gone up by 1.4% to £17,647, and the average EV price is up by 2.7%. And that's in part due to the fact that there are higher value cars in the marketplace, not necessarily the strength in the market. Generally speaking, dealer group financial reporting is polarized. There are some that are reporting successful years, and there are some that have reported a loss. And that is largely down to cost increases implemented by the government and just general inflation, forcing some of the smaller dealers to close, and in fact, some of the larger groups to evaluate individual sites and either close or put them together with other different brands in the same place. In terms of management restructures, I think that's probably largely being completed off the back of all these annual reports, and I think we're starting to see stability come back into senior management within those major groups. But they are facing lower footfall, and as a result, less consumer engagement, which is making it much more difficult to close deals. Having to offer a little bit of extra discount, maybe enhance the part exchange value, but overall margins remain under pressure, something we'd really like to see an end of over the coming months ahead. Wholesale demand for used cars in lower grades is a little bit weaker than it has been before, because people are trying to avoid having to refurb the vehicles, and there are more vehicles available in the wholesale market, which doesn't help. The elephant in the room, of course, is the Supreme Court ruling on August the 1st, which has calmed the finance market down quite considerably, although the FCA still sees potential for recourse for certain types of transactions which may or may not have been unfair or unlawful, and it's going to be awfully difficult to actually prove those individual cases, and will take some time. There's going to be more to come on what the FCA are proposing over the coming weeks, because it's a bit of a moving feast. And of course, we've got the government subsidy for new EVs, and that importance for that for the used car market is how much that will affect residual values on late plate EVs, and therefore perhaps pushing down older EVs as well. So this is just a snapshot. For more detail on what's been going on in the market, please read the Brego Monthly Car Insight Report, which can be found on the LinkedIn page or on our website, or of course you can reach out to me and I can forward it to you. So that concludes what I would like to talk to you about today in terms of what's been going on in the marketplace. But if you want to move your business profitably forward, then you need to speak to the Brego sales team to discover how the Brego platform and the Brego data will give your business greater visibility of the whole UK auto market, and therefore help you to identify those niches where you will have opportunities to improve sales and profit. Thank you very much, and I'll see you soon.